Impeachment for SHENNA is on the table. SHENNA Bellows, the Trump-removing insane Maine secretary, is now under fire from this guy, State Representative John Andrews, who says that, you know, Democrats are just going to Democrat. That's all they do. They're cheaters, they're bullies, they're liars, they're stealers, and they want to censor anybody who has a good idea or even challenges their fake narrative. And so he's going to explain, you know, we're in this process of investigating whether to impeach this woman, and we're going to listen to SHENNA Bellows explain her basis for removing Trump. She showed up on MSNBC, her #1 fan show page, and is very excited to talk to them. So we'll see what everybody says about it. But this guy is going to get us started. What is happening in Maine? What is the reaction to this? This guy is a state representative, and here is what he says.
The Maine Secretary of State, he joins us now. John, good morning to you. I don't think before this, many people outside of the state of Maine knew who SHENNA Bellows was. So let's start by you telling us about who she is and your effort to impeach her.
Well, in Maine, the people do not elect the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, or the Treasurer. They are chosen by party insiders in the legislature. So it makes the position inherently political, and SHENNA Bellows should know that. She should be going out of her way to be nonpartisan. But with this edict, SHENNA Bellows has unilaterally disenfranchised 300,060 Maine voters with this partisan move. Our nation is a republic. Maine is made up of citizens and not subjects in the duchy of SHENNA Bellows. But keeping people they don't like off the ballot is nothing new for Democrats. They did it to Abraham Lincoln. They did it in the Jim Crow Reconstruction South.
Barack Obama
Over
did
the
it.
decades, the Democratic Party hasn't really changed. They've just gotten much better public relations.
Yeah. And John, you mentioned,
Nice.
you used a keyword there, disenfranchisement. And if you look back, a Twitter, now known as X post from Bellows in January of 2022, she said this: the fundamental right of any American citizen to vote freely, fairly, and to have their vote counted is the premise of our democracy.
Yeah.
The Constitution and Bill
Unless
of
it's
Rights
Trump.
are not values to be compromised away, but yet she is not giving those voters the right to vote for their candidate. Appears that Mr. Trump is the front runner to be the nominee in your state. So is she consumed with, drunk with power of her office, or is there some way you can connect those two opposing statements?
She's got something lined up for her.
Well, they've repeatedly cited the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and under SHENNA Bellows' new standard, you could argue that President Biden be barred due to Section 3 with the statement of giving aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. I'd argue that releasing billions to Iran and selling our strategic oil reserves to Chinese interests could qualify that if no convictions are required under SHENNA Bellows' new rules.
Yes.
And that's why this is such a dangerous game that she's created.
John, I spend a lot of time in Maine. I've got friends up there in northern Maine. I know the state from the areas I go to pretty well, which is that there are a lot of conservatives, maybe not Republican voters, but conservative Americans in the state of Maine. Your state house is broken down, favors Democrats pretty heavily, but a healthy amount of Republicans, the Senate a little bit wider margin there. And you've got a Democrat governor. What are the repercussions if this Secretary of State goes through with this and it isn't settled legally? What are the voters in Maine going to think about it?
She opened the door to election chaos. I really don't think that we can have somebody as partisan as SHENNA Bellows being in charge of our elections going forward. I think even extremely progressive Democrat Jared Golden said that she's in the wrong, that he doesn't like Trump, but he should be on the ballot. And I applaud him for saying that because he's correct.
Absolutely.
It's the right move. And SHENNA is trying to jockey herself for the 2026 governor Democratic primary. I'm sure this will be made into a fundraising email in the years to come. I'd put money on that.
Yeah, because she's going to be under attack, right? I'm under attack. The Republicans are attacking me. She's going to make a ton of money and be seen as a Democrat hero.
Yeah, you're right. This is getting bipartisan criticism from both Democrats and Republicans. What are the people of Maine saying to you? I know that this just happened, but have you spoken to any voters?
I was up till about 1 last night answering every phone call I got, and the voters of Maine have had enough. I think for the first time in a long time, we have a real shot at a Republican majority in this state.
Wow.
And I would urge everybody out there, even an independents who lean conservative, get out there, vote Republican. You know, I like Ramaswamy and all the things he's been saying, but I think everybody in Maine now is all aboard the Trump train.
The area I frequent is certainly on the Trump train. I can tell you from the signs I see on the side of the road up there. So
Probably going to be just more support for him, right? People are realizing that Trump has been accurate. All of this political gamesmanship, all of these prosecutions, the weaponization of our government at every single layer has been happening. The left and the media have been saying it's all fake. But when they do this, right, they expose themselves. Like, we can all see who they are because it's just naked and open. But this was the same woman. She shows up, SHENNA Bellows, shows up on MSNBC to have a conversation about her anti-democratic tyrannical behavior. And this is what Lawrence O'Donnell sounded like when he was talking to her.
Of State, SHENNA Bellows. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Madam Secretary. Secretary. Really appreciate it. We just heard Yale historian Professor Blight saying that you got the 14th Amendment exactly right. And he is the highest authority on the 14th Amendment as a historian that I'm aware of.
I never even heard of the guy. What are you talking about?
He says you got the 14th Amendment exactly right. As you approached this, how did you do your fact finding that you could then apply to the law?
She didn't. She read the didn't even probably read it, incorporated the January 6th report, and then called a witness from a law school in Indiana.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. I think for your viewers tonight, it's really important to understand.
Yeah, they're idiots. MSNBC.
And the fact that at different states, as a general matter, states have inherent authority over the ballot, and states manage their own elections differently. Different states have different laws regarding ballot access. In Maine, if a candidate is qualified for the ballot, any registered Maine voter may bring a challenge. And then as secretary, I must, in fact, hold an administrative hearing.
Yeah, we got it.
I'm a hearing officer, not an advocate, to hear both the perspective of the candidate and the challenger. They present evidence, they present witnesses, there's ability to cross-examine the witnesses and contest the evidence. And then my decision is based solely on the record of the hearing, on the exhibits and the witness and testimony presented.
You're a law professor and the
So
January 6th
that is how I must make my determination.
And YouTube videos.
Maine law requires that I make a determination about access to the ballot and issue that determination within 5 days of the conclusion of the proceeding. So I was duty bound to follow Maine law.
I had to save us, our country.
Ensure that candidates, all the candidates who appear on the primary ballot, are qualified for the office they seek.
I see you relying on the proof that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection is that he took no timely action to stop it. And that is an actual fact of the history that we know. That fact has been...
He took no timely action, okay? How do you define timely there, Chris? We've got questions about that. You're substituting your judgment. You don't know what Trump was doing back then.
Established by the January 6th committee and by other investigations of that day. And Donald Trump has never once suggested that he did anything at all during the time when he is accused of doing nothing to stop the insurrection. That seems to me to be a key element of the evidence you had to consider.
That's the evidence, is that Trump didn't respond quickly enough, so you're substituting your judgment for the presidency. You're not allowed to do that. You don't just get to make that up.
My decision is 36 pages. I encourage people to read it on the Secretary of State website.
We read it. It's garbage.
The weight of the evidence.
You didn't write it either.
All of the evidence made clear that Mr. Trump was aware of the tinder laid by a multi-month effort to delegitimize a Democratic election, the election of 2020, and then chose...
It was illegitimate. He's allowed to have that opinion. We sat here and watched it. That is the process of America, okay? We have differences of opinions. We debate them in the public. The people can vote, and then the people live with the results, right? And in this current case, they shoved Joe Biden in there in front of us. And so Trump has every right to say it was rigged.
To light a match on January 6th and then did nothing for a time. The evidence presented demonstrated, and remember the events of January 6, 2021, and this was borne out by the evidence, were unprecedented and tragic. They were an attack not only upon the Capitol, government officials there, members of Congress,
say it.
former vice president, but also an attack on the rule of law.
Okay, there it is.
And the evidence demonstrated that they occurred at the
I thought she was going to say democracy. She said rule of law. Same thing.
And with the knowledge and support of the outgoing president.
She didn't say anything.
Maine Secretary of State SHENNA Bellows, who made history today. Thank you very much for joining our discussion tonight.
Thank you.
All right, cut that one short. That was a 5-minute segment. He's like, she's terrible. She's not even saying anything. Bunch of fake platitudes. Now, what's funny is she talks about that. I have no choice, right? I'm duty bound. He says, you made history. You're probably going to get a job here. We'll have you back on as a contributor at some point. But this is what she said previously. No forces can undermine our elections. This is the same woman. Listen to how deluded they are and how much their positions change based on whatever they need to get done. Here is Miss Bellows.
But that type of activity, so make no mistake, what we saw nationwide around the country in 2020 that created anxiety about whether the will of the voters would be heard.
It was not.
Is those forces that would undermine our elections and the integrity of our elections and democracy are still very much at work nationwide.
Yeah, but it's you, Shenna. You're the force. You are the only person who is disenfranchising hundreds of thousands of people. Not us. You who, along with the 4 Supreme Court justices in Colorado, are doing the same thing. So it's wild that they'll lecture us about democracy. This clip came from Matt Wallace, and it's just exactly who they are. So what is the reaction here? House Chair Representative Elise Stefanik, she posted this. She said, my full statement on the unconstitutional removal. She's the conference chair for the Republicans. She says, today, House Republican Chair Elise Stefanik released the following statement. Says, another day, another illegal and corrupt act by the desperate radical Democrats weaponizing government against President Trump. Joe Biden's top political opponent, the far-left Democrat Maine Secretary of State, just unilaterally removed President Trump off the ballot. This is election interference. This is voter suppression. This is a blatant attack on democracy, saying the Supreme Court must overturn this unprecedented and unconstitutional action now. And so this case is not at the Supreme Court. Currently, it is working its way up to the Superior Court in Maine, and then from there, I'm sure they'll appeal it to the state Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, and then to the Supreme Court. And it's going to cost Trump time and money and effort, and it's going to gobble up a lot of campaign resources and legal fees. Now, ultimately, I think it might actually help him. He's spending his money on legal defenses, but it's like almost like free marketing, and everybody just goes, wait, what? Are you kidding me? They're throwing him off the ballots? That's kind of insane, right? Even if you're middle of the roader, what are they doing that for? Because they don't want you to vote for him, because they're freaked out about him, because he is going to do something that they don't want to do, which is change the direction of the country. And so Tulsi Gabbard was also responding to this. This is what she sounded like when she was speaking about this on the mainstream news.
This move by the Secretary of State in Maine, they want Trump off the ballot.
I think it's really important, Pete, for every single American who's seeing this news alert popping up to recognize how dangerous this is. You have a Secretary of State who is a known partisan, who is known to be against Trump. She supported the impeachment of Trump, single-handedly making this decision to say the former president cannot be on the ballot, taking away our right as voters in this country to decide who we want to serve as our next president and commander-in-chief. You take away the party labels, you take away the names of Trump versus Biden. Recognize how dangerous this is, where if this is allowed to stand, one person gets to take away the voices and the rights of every single American to engage in our democratic process. That is literally what is at stake here. So whether people like Trump or don't like Trump, or like Biden, don't like Biden, that's not the point here. If you're a Democrat or Republican, now is the time that we as Americans must stand up for our democratic process in this country and our right and our voice to decide our future.
She's right. I wish more people were talking like that. She's a former Democrat, I believe, and so she is awakening to what that party has done. And lastly, we've got Vivek. Vivek has always been front and center. He's even argued that he's going to just remove himself from the process in protest if Trump is not on the ballots. And here is his reaction.
But I would say that this is not an action of one person. This is the action of an entire system that has an anaphylactic reaction to one man. And I think they're dropping the breadcrumbs. They're making it clearer by the day. I'm concerned that they will not allow this man to get anywhere near the start line of the election, let alone the finish line. And I say this as somebody who's running in the same race as Donald Trump. This is not how we should want to win. So I stand by the pledge I made earlier on the back of the Colorado decision, and I reiterate it today, that I will voluntarily, as a Republican candidate, remove myself from any GOP primary ballot where one of my competitors, Donald Trump included, is forcibly removed through this unconstitutional maneuver. And I think one thing that the other Republican candidates can do, Kayleigh, is to fight against this, to say that Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie do the same thing, that if Maine is going to do this, we then take Maine out of the GOP primary process. That's the logical way to handle this, and so I made that announcement tonight. I challenge every one of my other competitors in the GOP primary to do the same thing, to say that we will not stand by idly and watch this brazen form of election interference in the GOP primary itself. And I think that's not a left-wing or a right-wing issue. It shouldn't be. This is about the Constitution and who we are as Americans, and that's why I've taken the position I have.
It's a good position. I think that it is showing solidarity that the process is garbage, and he's hopeful that there will be some reaction maybe from the party. What are the Republicans doing? Are they going to boot Michigan or Maine out of the primary process, or they just, everybody kind of just goes along and gets along? Because a lot of people would like to see Trump off the ballot in the Republican governance, right? People at the top, I think, would be thrilled if they could boot Trump off the ballot. They just can't figure out a way to do it without alienating and wrecking the party and the country. And so we'll be here continuing to cover this and more, my friends. This is just warming up. know, these battles are going to go on for the next foreseeable future. And so we'll be here continuing to cover. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for sharing this video with a friend or family member, inviting them to come over to our live stream. And we'd also love to invite you over to our newest project called the Watcher Lodge. And you can go here to this website. It's at watcherlodge.com. And here, we'd love it if you joined us for our 2024 Fitness Challenge. You can click this Fitness Challenge tab below. We talk a lot about some heavy stuff on this channel, but we want to start 2024 off right, de-stressing ourselves and engaging in some very good behaviors, because we're going to have a long year ahead. And what better way to do it than by jumping into fitness? And so we're going to be posting threads at the lodge, watcherlodge.com. We're going to have our launch party on the 1st, and you can RSVP here. It's all free. Click the community calendar and come over there and sign up for the lodge. We're going to be doing our launch party fitness challenge on January 1st. We'll not be streaming here on this channel, so come and say hello at the lodge, watcherlodge.com. We're trying to also be a part of the solution and make sure that we have good health and good wellness and sustainability into 2024 and beyond, because there's going to be a long road ahead and we want to make sure we're all here together. So come check it out, watcherlodge.com. Thanks for subscribing. We'll see you back here on the next one.